Welcome to the second lecture in Visual Literacy, Workshop 2 GDE. This lecture is about principles of design. We will be looking at the principles of design. The principles of design refer to the use of the various art elements in relation to each other. We will look at balance, scale or proportion, emphasis or focus, contrast, movement and rhythm, and unity. First, let us explore balance. Balance refers to the visual tension or equilibrium between elements. Balance can be symmetrical or asymmetrical. According to Jennifer Kernan, balance in design and art is the distribution of elements of the design. Balance is a visual interpretation of gravity. Large, dense elements appear to be heavier, while smaller elements appear to be lighter. You can balance designs and artworks in three ways: symmetrical balance, asymmetrical balance, or discordant or off balance. Symmetrical balance is achieved by placing elements in a very even fashion in the design or artwork. If you have a large, heavy element on the right side, you'll have a matching heavy element on the left. Centering is the easiest way to get a symmetrical balanced page. But be careful, as it can be difficult to create a centered design that doesn't look flat or boring. If you want a symmetrical design, it's better to create the balance with different elements, such as an image on the left and a large block of heavier text on the right. Asymmetrical balance in pages can be more challenging to design or draw or paint, as they don't have elements matched across the center line of the page. For example, you might have a large element placed very close to the center line of the design or artwork. To balance it asymmetrically, you might have a small element farther away from the center line. If you think of your design or artwork as being on a teeter-totter or seesaw, a lighter element can balance a heavier one by being further away from the center of gravity. You can also use color or texture to balance an asymmetrical design. Discordant or off-balance designs or artwork. Sometimes the purpose of the design or artwork makes an off-balance or discordant design work very well. Designs or artworks that are off-balance suggest motion and action. They make people uncomfortable or uneasy. If the content of your design or artwork is also intended to be uncomfortable or make people think, a discordantly balanced design or artwork can work well. The artwork in this slide reflects balance. It reflects a symmetrical balance. In this artwork, two identical sides with a central point of axis is visible. So if you cut the artwork in half, the left and right are mirror images of each other. The artwork have equally weighted visuals on either side. Scale and proportion. Scale or proportion both engages size. Scale refers to the relation of one object to another in terms of space in an artwork. Proportion engages the size of an object to different parts of the same object. According to Lucy Lamb, scale refers to the size of an object in relationship to another object. In art, the size relationship between an object and the human body is significant. In experiencing the scale of an artwork, we tend to compare its size to the size of our own bodies. An artwork has a physical size. When referring to an artwork's size, we use the term scale. Scale is more than simply the object's size. It is the size of the art object in relation to another object. The relative size of the artwork is always compared to the size of the human body. Proportion refers to the relative size of parts of a whole. We often think of proportions in terms of size relationships within the human body. This artwork reflects an interesting scale. It's by Zondi Chippa, lino cut from the 1980s. The artwork resembles distribution of the visual weight of objects, texture and space. These elements are balanced to make the artwork feel stable. An example of scale and proportion is in the artwork David by Michelangelo. According to Lucy Lamb, this image is an excellent illustration of both scale and proportion in art. Michelangelo's sculpture David represents the Renaissance emphasis on the ideal, based on the ancient Greek model of the ideal. Rationality reflected in the portrayal of perfection in the human body. The scale of this overwhelming figure is larger than life. It's over 13 feet tall. In addition, it is placed on a pedestal taller than the average human, so that the sculpture towers far above the viewer. This gives it a sense of godlike grandeur. The proportions within the body are based on an ancient Greek mathematical system, which is meant to define perfection in the human body. Emphasis or focus. Elements are combined in a manner to produce a focal point which stresses the importance of the specific area or object. It is usually very different to the rest of the picture and thus stands out. According to Mads Sugard, emphasis or focus is a strategy that aims to draw the viewer's attention to a specific design element. That could be an area of content or an image. Emphasis surrounds us, even if we don't realize that it's called emphasis. Design elements that creates emphasis is line, shapes, colors, texture and mass. Lines. Many artists use a specific linear flow to determine the overall direction of the page. When you change this flow, you call attention to the point on the page where the flow is broken. For example, if your artwork uses horizontal lines, and if you break the pattern and use a vertical line, it will stand out as a point where attention is required. This is automatic. It is important that you make the distraction meaningful. The second design element to create emphasis is shape. If you are using a group of similar shapes on a page, say for instance rectangles, then using a different shape, such as circles, will instantly draw the eye. The eye loves to go to find something different straight away. Many puzzles and fun memes on the internet challenge us to find the different shapes in the sea of many shapes, which are the same as each other, but only slightly different from it. The third design element to create emphasis is color. A shifting color can create a focal point in a design. The more contrasting the change, the more the point demands the viewer's attention. Softer contrasts can gradually draw attention from one area to the next. Your choice of color should be in keeping with how you want your users to proceed on your page. Loud or dramatic color contrasts will make their eye jump. Softer swifts will allow them to move more leisurely, so you can keep a calmer information flow. Then texture. You can also use the texture of an artwork to draw attention to an element. For example, you can use an embossed effect to emphasize areas in text. Or in another example, you can use drop shadows to make an area stand out on a page. Mass. You can use color or shape to suggest heaviness. For example, using a dark colored element within a brightly colored page is likely to emphasize the dark colored element against the rest of the content. You can see this in headline and title text in written content on almost every website. The artwork in this slide is an example of how emphasis or focus is used in an artwork. This work is by Willie Bester and it's called The Tribute to Chris Hani. In this artwork, a specific element, which is a portrait of a face, stands out or draw attention to the eye. Emphasis or focus is achieved in this artwork through the placing of elements in positions where the eye is naturally drawn, and by using other principles such as contrast, repetition, or movement. The elements in the artwork gain emphasis through size, visual weight, color, complexity, uniqueness, placement, and other features. And let us have a look at contrast. Contrast engages the organization of differing elements and effects. For example, light versus dark, smooth versus rough, and large versus small elements. According to Jennifer Farley, contrast occurs when two elements on a page are different. For example, it could be different colors between the foreground and the background. It could be difference between a large graphic and a small graphic, or it could be a rough texture combined with a smooth texture. Our eyes like contrast. Contrast is visible in this painting made by Nicola Samari, titled Apartheid, made in 2015. The contrast in this painting is exciting and dramatic and naturally aesthetically pleasing. Contrast between light and dark and texture in this painting creates a focal point, or a spot to which your eye is naturally drawn. The light element, which is the figure, becomes more immediately visible than its contrasted opposite, giving it more visual weight and attracting the eye. Movement and rhythm. This is achieved with repetition or the careful placement of elements that align or is grouped together to encourage the viewer's eye to move through the image. According to Smashing Magazine, movement is closely related to direction. Motion implies a direction, and direction implies movement. If you want someone to look to the right, one way is to have something on the page move to the right. The eye will follow it. There are several types of movement: literal movement, static movement, and compositional movement. Literal movement is also called physical movement and occurs when some physical activity is present. Static movement occurs when the eye jumps around from point to point in the hierarchy. Compositional movement occurs when design elements lead the viewer's eye from one point to another through a composition. Rhythm can help control the pace of flow in a composition. It is patterned movement. Rhythmic patterns are built from elements and the intervals between them. And just as your ear will follow along with the rhythm of a song, your eye will follow rhythm created visually. A pattern and a rhythm will exist as soon as you add multiple elements to the page. Two of anything implies a structure. It is going to be there no matter what you do. You should learn to control it. Repetition creates flow and rhythm through the repeated elements. When the eye sees a red circle, it notices other red circles in the composition and seeks to establish a pattern. In addition to repetition, you can use alternation and gradation to create rhythm. Alternation creates patterns through contrasting pairs. Gradation creates patterns through progression of regular steps. There are three primary types of rhythm: regular, flowing, and progressive rhythm. Regular rhythm occurs when the intervals between elements are predictable, or the elements themselves are similar in size and length. Placing repeating elements at regular intervals would be an example. Flowing rhythms occurs when the elements or intervals are organic. This creates natural patterns that evoke a feeling of organic movement. Progressive rhythm occurs when the sequence of forms or shapes is shown through progressive steps. Some characteristics of elements might have step changes, or the interval might have step changes. This artwork by Azaria Mbata reflects movement and rhythm. In this artwork, rhythm is a movement in which some elements recurs regularly. Like a dance, it has a flow of objects that seems to be like the beat of music. In this artwork, movement is the path the viewer's eye takes through the artwork. It is directed along lines, edges, shapes, and color. It is closely tied to rhythm. The last principle of design we will be looking at is unity. Unity is how diverse elements of a composition interrelate with each other. It refers to an artwork as a whole rather than separate elements. According to Stephen Bradley, the idea behind the design or artwork component unity is to create elements that support each other and all work together towards a common goal. It's about avoiding mixed messages. Your artwork and design elements should look like they belong together and not be placed randomly on the page. There are two kinds of unity: visual and conceptual unity. Visual unity, for example, is a group of elements that all aligns to a common axis. Conceptual unity, for example, is an image of a diamond, a mansion, and a pile of money, which might unify around the concept of wealth. Unity is a measure of how well the elements on the page belong together. Through unity, a viewer should first see the whole and then the sum of the parts making that whole. The artwork The Kiss by Gustav Klimt suggests unity. In this painting, the artist had a clear idea of what he was trying to communicate. His artistic elements could not be unified toward a common message if he didn't have a clear idea of what the message was. The message in this painting is the unity of two people through a kiss. Everything in the painting complements the key theme and concept. Placing an image on the page because it looks good is not unity. Placing the image on the page enhances communication of the artwork's theme, which is unity. The artist used the basic design principles of contrast, repetition, alignment, and proximity to achieve visual unity. Contrast adds variety within the unity. The artist makes use of contrast between colors, light, and dark values. Repetition. The artist used patterns appearing and reappearing. Alignment. The artist used elements that shared common axis which appeared more related to each other. And proximity. The artist used objects such as the faces that are closer to each other which relates to each other. We hope that you have enjoyed this lecture. Keep well and thank you so much.